My name is Facundo Romani. I'm from Argentina, and I'm part of the Early Career Advisory group at eLife, and I will be the moderator of this session. eLife is a non-profit organization that's operating a platform to improve all aspects of research communication by engaging and recognizing the most responsible behavior in research. The role of the Early Career Advisory Group, or ECAG as we used to mention, is to influence and support eLife work to catalyze broad reform in the evaluation and communication of science, and in particular to represent the needs and aspirations of researchers of early career stages to foster a research culture that is healthy for scientists and for scientists. The ECAG champions different initiatives, and the Easier Wednesday is one of them. Today, our webinar panelists will discuss the role of the eLife Community Ambassador Program and the eLife Community Ambassador Program impact in previous editions. So we will close the discussion with a session of question and answers, as well as addressing basic questions about how the program works. So in the first place, let me start with a little housekeeping stuff. During the webinar, please be respectful, honest, inclusive, accommodating, appreciative, and open to learning from everyone else. Do not attack, demean, disrupt, harass, or cheating others or encourage such behavior. We reserve the right to ask everyone to leave or to deny access to a subsequent webinar. If you feel uncomfortable or unwelcome or any of these webinars, please contact eLife by email via eLife safety team protonmail.com. As Shane mentioned, I will be moderating these sessions, and this session will be recorded. If you need any help, please chat with me or with Shane to let us know if you have any problem. We have 4 panelists today, each of whom will give a 5-minute presentation. I will tell us about the experience of being an ambassador at eLife. You are welcome to ask questions at any point during the webinar. You can do so by typing the questions into Zoom's chat box or tweet us in the eLife community account using the hashtag Easier Wednesday. I will read your name and the questions during the question and answer that will happen when all the panelists and their talks. And now I will talk Cora Korsek, Head of Communication, Head of Communities at eLife, that will explain the community program for all of us. Thank you, Cora.
Thank you, Facundo. And Shane, please move the slide for me so I can see what I'm talking about. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. And I'm really glad that you're interested in the program, or at least I think that might be the case. So let's start by launching a little poll to just find out how did you even hear about eLife Ambassadors in the first place? I would be really grateful for your responses. And in the meantime, I shall start about kind of the main purpose of the program. So it's important to start with talking about what eLife is as an organization. We are, so eLife has been set up in 2012. So the next year edition of the program will be kind of a part of our celebrations of the 10th anniversary of the organization. And we've been set up by the 3 funders in science, the Wellcome Trust, the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, and the Max Planck Society, to basically to disrupt the way that science is being published and make it more efficient and kind of more rewarding for scientists. And that's how we started building this, an organization that can accelerate discovery by operating a platform for research communication that has the main purpose of encouraging responsible and open behaviors in science. And the great vision of eLife is that if we manage to to increase openness and integrity and inclusivity in science, and kind of the communication of scientific results is part of that, is part of achieving that kind of vision. And that is what we're hoping our eLife community ambassadors will help us achieve as well, both by learning from you or from the ambassadors about the key concerns that you're having, and the novel, interesting ways and ideas for how those problems can be approached, and by also embarking some of our learning that we had before about how to go about how to go about being more open and to have greater integrity and inclusivity in the research enterprise. And also about how to go about encouraging others to do so. So it's eLife Community Ambassadors is a program of kind of mutual learning and mutual support in that sense. Thank you for participating in the poll, and I'm glad to hear that a lot of you have found about the program from our email. So that's nice. And it's good to know that other channels are also active, including that there are people actively sharing this with others and encouraging others to apply. Thank you. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, as I said, kind of to make a difference, to make a change in promoting openness, integrity, and inclusivity in research, but also providing support for early career researchers and keeping abreast of what's important to you. eLife has first of all founded the Early Career Advisory Group back in 2014 to help us, be connected with early career researchers. And as a kind of one of the initiatives of Early Career Advisory Group, we have founded the eLife Community Ambassadors Program back in 2018. And the current edition that we're recruiting new ambassadors to is a third run of this program. And it's important because obviously both the ECAG and the eLife ambassadors are embedded within the greater community of early career researchers, and as by definition also in the greater kind of global research community, which eLife definitely wants to be connected with. So that's the whole point of this program. That it's a kind of mutual exchange of kind of both learning and concerns to help us kind of fit better with what the research community needs to thrive, and especially what the early career researchers need to thrive in your early stages of careers and as you progress, and also how eLife can address that in terms of encouraging change in the culture to greater openness and integrity, as well as diversity. Okay, well, let's go to the next slide. The recruitment process has, very quickly, we can go to the next slide, Shane. So it's basically, as you know, I think that was relatively clear from the announcement, we're looking to kind of scale down the number of ambassadors this year to 120. We had, I think, about twice that many in the prior edition. But I think it's just proven that it's very difficult to keep in touch with everybody individually when there are so many people. So we were trying to provide slightly more support to a slightly smaller number of people. We're hoping that this way you will feel that you're more cared for in the program, because there will be slightly less people. But in the same time, it's still for early career researchers, and we're seeking to have great a good gender representation, as well as attracting researchers from different regions, also those that have been underrepresented in the previous programs, so especially Africa, Oceania, Latin America. And as you might know, I think the next slide has the dates. So yes, exactly. So let's go ahead to that. So the deadline for applications is the 7th of November. So it's just short of 2 weeks right now. And what we require is for you to kind of file in the first application. One of the event today is an opportunity to hear from other ambassadors and to ask your questions if you're unsure. about whether to apply or how to apply, or what to say in your application. And then those of you who will have, who will pass the first shortlisting, exercise, will be invited to another stage of recruitment, which will be kind of a very brief task that you will be able to find in your own time. And again, there will be a few weeks to complete that, just to make sure that that everybody who ends up in the program actually understands and sees themselves as part of the Community Ambassadors program, that we have some sort of level of basic understanding, of basic common understanding of what it is that we're doing together. And then, those who will have completed the recruitment task will hear from us in early January, and then will be invited to confirm their place in the program, and we will invite them to a call which will happen in the first week of February, so between the 31st January and 4th of February. So those are the key dates. Let's go ahead. So I don't want to take the entire time of this call. So in terms of the structure of the program this year, that's the innovation, and I wonder what our panelists will think about that. Actually, those who have had experience with prior programs, because in the past we were trying to do all those things together: the community building, the training, the activism, and then obviously we will take pauses to celebrate some of the successes. And what we found is, I think, that it was very overwhelming for the ambassadors in the past. So we made a conscious decision to start the program with about 6 months of just focus on the training, kind of bringing your skills to a level where you'll be comfortable doing your kind of ambassadorship roles. But also building the community to kind of help you meet one another, understand what interests everybody has, what perspectives everybody brings to the program, and that's really important for us. And that's why we're so strongly emphasizing the need for diversity and looking for candidates from different backgrounds, is because we're hoping that people will bring those different perspectives to the program. And we found that in the past, many ambassadors, but also eClub members, actually have been highlighting how just learning about different perspectives, or different ways that there's different challenges and different opportunities that people have in doing science in their own communities, where they are, in the different circumstances that they are, how that really opens eyes to different possibilities and chances that we can have together, and also for why this agenda of openness, integrity, and inclusivity is so important, to make sure that we all have a kind of a equitable opportunity to take part in doing science and moving science forward. And when we have built that community and training, then will be the time to do that activism and make sure that the agenda progresses. And Shane, I'm not sure if you know that you're progressing slides. And then at the end we'll try to take some time to reflect and evaluate the program, and also celebrate the successes that you inevitably will have as ambassadors. So yes, we'll, as it says on the slide, we'll be building communities by giving a number of different opportunities and different formats for people to meet each other. The ambassadors program has an assumption that a lot of things are happening asynchronously in writing on our forum. But there obviously will be calls as well, but it won't be. We hope that we won't overwhelm you with the calls, and we'll give you an opportunity to interact with other ambassadors in writing in an asynchronous way, so that it doesn't necessarily take your time from when you should be asleep or should be working and so on, or your family time as well. We will provide training sessions. We're hoping to give at least one training session per month at the moment. And there will be on a variety of skills that our ambassadors in the past either found useful or told us they would like to learn more about. We will always be open to more suggestions for training. So if anybody or if group of ambassadors feels that there are there are skills or there's knowledge that many ambassadors are missing and that would be useful to bring in, we'll look to cater for that. But we're hoping that at least we'll have some sort of basics secured with the first 6 months of the program. But as I say, because we have learned through the last 2 cohorts about what ambassadors find useful. The other thing that will be happening in the first 6 months, we'll find different opportunities for connecting the eLife ambassadors with our ECAG, with eLife staff. So you will learn, you can see Shane also right now, who has introduced himself, and myself, and there are other colleagues as well. Eilish O'Carroll unfortunately couldn't be here today, but she will be managing the program, and you will also kind of meet other colleagues as you go, as relevant to your work and to other initiatives or questions that you will be having. You will be able to familiarize and engage with our work on current programs that we have. So, for example, the early career reviewers pool, but also, others. And the time commitment that we're expecting is approximately 3 hours per week for ambassadors. And this fluctuates greatly. So, you can expect that in the first week, you'll probably spend a little more time on it because you'll be keen to read introductions from everybody and there will be the welcome call and so on. So, it might be 3 hours or a few minutes more. And then there will be weeks when you probably won't spend more than an hour just reading through the forum and, contributing with your own thoughts. But that's the fairest assessment we were able to make in terms of the more or less maximum time that people spend. And it is fair to say that it is very flexible. So some of the ambassadors decide they want to be more involved and spend more time. And some of the ambassadors may, due to a number of circumstances, be that family arrangements or field work or whatever else, or a sensitive time or of defending your thesis or other things at different times during the program. Ambassadors may actually need to reduce their activity and then maybe come back at a different stage. So we understand all that. And we basically count on the ambassadors to kind of let us know if they have challenges around engaging in a specific period of time. That's that, and let's go to the next phase. Okay, so this is not the next phase yet. It's just about a little bit of highlighting what other things have been happening in the past. As you can see, there is the training that has been either held or suggested in the past. There is things related to just using our fora and the different platforms that we'll be offering you. We used to have training in science writing, but also social media training is optional. We will talk about how to build or chair your community. And we'll definitely learn about open science and reproducibility. That's one of the main things that I hope, if you don't take anything else from the program, you'll have that under your belt. And we'll also talk about equality, diversity, and inclusion. And we'll introduce you to the new platform that eLife is building, Society, for where you can discover science in the latest preprints through the medium of evaluations, and you can also become curators of what the best science should be. We've also talked in the past about time management and kind of personal management. And there's been a strong group of people in the program who were learning about and realizing a meta research project that I think Alec will be able to tell us a little more about, and many other things that we've learned in the past from our ambassadors. And we'll encourage you to provide feedback during the program, and we'll take on board the suggestions that you're making, as far as feasible, obviously, but we'll endeavor to do that. We'll have guest speakers, people from other communities, other programs that have like-minded aims and that you might be interested to somehow get involved in. It could be eLife editors and eLife staff as well, former ambassadors or ECAG members. So there will be plenty of opportunities to learn about what is happening, but also learn about the skills or different knowledge that you will be using in the program or in your own research, actually. Thank you. So let's go to the next slide. And then after that initial baseline amount of training and, internal discussions and getting to know one another, let's go to the next slide, we'll have the activism phase. And that will be where you will have the opportunity to learn more about those initiatives that ambassadors have been realizing before, and some of them will be open for you to get involved in those. You will also have the opportunities to kind of brainstorm and develop new ideas for initiatives if you come, with your own ideas or develop some during that time. Then we'll encourage you to think about how to bring that to life, how to make them happen, and there will be a level of kind of both community and pro within the ambassadors community itself, and then also from the eLife leadership in terms of the overview, so that eLife definitely can say that we stand behind you and we support you from almost from the top in a way, as well as from the grassroots with the community and from the top as a organization. So hopefully that will give you a good platform to start new initiatives. And then we'll also encourage you to facilitate connections with subject experts. So if you are coming up with a new initiative, we'll encourage you to work with people who already are active in that field or already do research in that field, whatever that, I can't really, given the variety, the great variety of initiatives that before, I'm not going to try and attempt what will be the next thing that someone might come up with, but we'll nevertheless encourage and help you find subject experts that you can connect to make sure that your initiative is at the forefront of action and brings real change to the community. Let's go to the next slide. As I said, I think in terms of the hopes for the community, which I've seen moving somewhere there, is this? I just reiterate again. Our main hope is that we'll be able to tap into the your ideas, but also your awareness of what your community needs and where your community is with regards to pursuing the agenda of openness. So as you can see, the previous ambassadors have kind of use their energy to pursue a number of different initiatives, anything from environmental sustainability through to mental health and career development, but also pursuing open science and talking about intersectionality and diversity. So there is a great variety of ideas that comes with a community of people like you. So this is really exciting. Every time that we launch the program, we'll learn something completely different. Let's go to the next slide. So yes, and then in the last month, intertwined with kind of winding down the activity, we'll also report and celebrate all the successes of the program, the different achievements that the ambassadors have had, anything from how many events or people you have spoken to in your community, or what were the successes that you had personally, through to what different outputs or outcomes have the different initiatives have brought out. And we'll also engage you in providing ample feedback on the program so that we can make sure that we capture your reflection, both in terms of what eLife could be doing as a whole and in terms of how we can improve the program going forward. And we'll also have a big celebration closing event, possibly as with everything else that will be happening on the program, there will be more than one to make sure that regardless of your time zone, you'll be able to participate. Thank you. Yep, and as I said, it's all about this mutual exchange of ideas and also of support from us to you mostly. So in terms of our vision for openness, integrity, and inclusiveness, we need to, as I said, we want to embark some of our learning and some of our ideas on the ambassadors, so you can take them into your communities and educate the community, but also come back to us and tell us how where your community is and what are your concerns within that space, with that scope of change to research culture, and how we can address that. And that's what we're hoping from you, to give us the insight into your communities whilst we support you to work with them and make science a better place. So that's, I think, the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. And obviously, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I'm happy to respond to them later. Thank you.
Thank you, Cora. I would like to introduce now our four panelists. The first speaker will be Alok Verma. Alok is a researcher at the Center of Center for Biological Sciences in India. He's a former ambassador and currently an ICAG member. So, Alok, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much, Facundo. Hi, I'm Alok Verma. I'm a graduate student at the National Center for Biological Sciences in Bangalore. And I was part of the eLife Ambassadors Program in the 2019-20 cohort. And I'm also now a member of the eLife Early Career Advisory Group along with Facundo. Let me just quickly tell you why I even joined the early eLife Ambassadors Program. It was because I think that it is part of scientists' responsibility to try and bring about positive systemic change to the way we function. And that was something that I wanted to do for some time. And I wanted to try and work and give back to the scientific community the kind of training or experiences that I might have. And also I was kind of having a tough time or a tough phase in my PhD where there were projects which were not working out and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I just took a chance with this program. It came at the right time. And I just joined. And I think that it has been a very enriching experience for me. I learned a lot and tried and participated in different initiatives. And in fact, it's also been the transition point. It was what really exposed me to the Early Career Advisory Group, which I applied to be a part of. So I think it gives a lot of exposure, and it was really enriching for me. So let me tell you about the initiatives that I was part of. I was part of two initiatives at the eLife Ambassadors Program. One is meta research, and the other one is the readability initiative. So I will talk about the readability initiative because we have Gozia also on the panel, who was part of the meta research program, and she will talk to you about that. So let's talk about the readability initiative. Well, the idea behind that is that we wanted to showcase how you can use technology and make papers much easier to write and much easier to read, and make it more inclusive and bring the scientific publication process into the internet era. Because if you think about it, we still publish as if we're publishing for print, where we have a fixed number of figures that you can have, and each figure is jam-packed with information in small panels, which doesn't make any sense anymore. It's high time we publish in a way that makes it easy for people to use the internet and the power of the internet in the process of publication. So we've tried to, and not only that, we can really simplify language, because currently it's very difficult for me as a scientist to read something from a slightly different field, because the papers are full of jargon, full of hundreds of references, terminology that we cannot understand at all, and that makes it more and more difficult for a community to come together as a whole, to have communication or collaboration across different fields. So what we did is we took an eLife paper, which is under the Creative Commons license, and we adapted it. We rewrote it. We tried to make it into what we call a lucid bio adaptation, and the QR code is on the screen. So please do check this out. And I will just give you a few features about what this lucid bio adaptation is. If you want, we can also share the link with you at a later point. So what we did is we just have a first draft version of this lucid bio adaptation. But the idea was we took the paper and we rewrote it into having short paragraphs and completely unpretentious language, nothing complicated. And then we had this idea of just starting simple and adding more details that you can get. Like, for example, in Wikipedia, you can easily hover over a link and get a boxed out version of what that terminology is, or just get a preview into what it means. So we have those hover over boxes within the paper itself. We've tried to make graphs interactive. So the same plot that you're seeing at the top right was directly taken from raw data from the paper, and we've replotted it, made it more interactive so you can hover over it. You could even select what you want to plot, because sometimes there are so many different conditions that you do in an experiment and the graph looks very complicated. So you can select out the irrelevant things and highlight what you want to see as a reader and not just as an author. Then we also integrated 3D protein structure exploration. So all of this becomes easy to do in the internet era, but is not that easy to do on paper. Like you'd have to take snapshots for these on paper. So these are just some of the features, and you can go to the next slide, please. We just have started. It's not like we've done, we've not yet reached the end of this project. The 2019-20 cohort was when this started. So we really thought about the idea, and we want to try and do more. For example, one of the things we really want to do is maybe integrate with the executable papers in eLife, or even try and make image.j applets that just fit into the paper, so that if you have images in the paper, you can just upload them without having to make the representative images that can be manipulated and so on. So you can just put raw images. People can change colors so that they can be colorblind friendly. We want to even put in features such as it turns out that if you change font, it helps dyslexic people read. So we would like to be able to put such features into this paper and present it to the scientific community as a whole. So I think we've just about started, and I really look forward to having more people join this initiative and support it in whatever way they can. So yeah, thanks so much. And I look forward to your interest and questions in the discussion.
Thank you, Alok, very much. Our next speaker will be Melanie Krause. Melanie is a researcher at the European Molecular Biology Laboratory in Germany, and also she's a former eLife community ambassador. So welcome, Melanie.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. So first of all, a little bit about me. As already said, I was a PhD student at University College London when I was involved in the eLife Ambassador Program. I'm currently a postdoc at EMBL. As I was a PhD student, I was also founding members of the sustainability committee of my institute, which then later on led to me being very involved in the sustainability initiative. And on the photo, you can see me wearing a fabulous Christmas colored lab suit for a specific event that we had at our institute. So I'm going to talk a little bit about being an eLife ambassador on sustainability and science. And I became an ambassador because, next slide, please. Yeah. Because I wanted to connect with like-minded people who are not necessarily in my specific field of research, because I feel like when you end up in conferences and when you surround yourself with other scientists, you often end up with people who work in the very same niche that you're working in. And it was really nice that through the ambassador program, I could connect with people who work completely different topics, with which partly I've never even heard of. But it was really, really cool. And we were together working on initiatives that I personally cared very much about. And let's talk a little bit about the initiatives I was involved in. And here I was mainly involved with two different initiatives. One was the sustainability initiative, which was actually suggested by somebody who worked in the same institute as me, because she was at the time involved in ECAC. I'm not sure if she still is, but that sustainability initiative started up when I joined the program. And then she was basically linking me into it, being like, Melanie knows a lot about this, perhaps she can assist. And we did a lot of stuff in this initiative. We were trying to raise awareness on basically the huge amount of energy and waste consumption that happens to particularly wet lab scientists. Just a quick number there. So scientists are responsible for about 2% of the world's plastic waste, but we only make up about 0.1% of the global population. So we produce about 20-fold of the plastic waste that other people are producing. We were writing articles and blog posts. Somebody in our group even designed a little card game where you could see the amount of energy that was used to produce a specific item you used in the lab. And then I was also involved in the intersectionality initiative, where I was particularly involved with helping to translate frameworks, guidelines, and lab manuals. For me, in this case, particularly in German, because they had written one in English and they wanted it to be accessible to as many people as possible. So they asked a couple of people to translate it, for example, in Spanish or Mandarin, and I was responsible for the German aspect of it. Now about the sustainability initiative. Next slide. So as mentioned, we were writing a couple of articles. Here you can see the Seize the Lab Waste Day one, where this was actually written in collaboration with somebody who's presenting it a bit later today. And what we did to raise awareness, and Bente actually came up with it, you can see her on that picture, was that on one specific day in the year that we picked at random, scientists would basically do their lab work as usual, but they would separately store all of the waste that they had produced, and then they would put it on a scale and measure how much waste they generated. So you can see here, she generated 350 grams of plastic waste that day, but that also means that working every day, she was producing 90 kilograms of plastic waste each year, which of course isn't great, but there were other people where you could see that she was pretty much on the lower end. And we were basically trying to get people then to rethink sustainability and trying to provide resources. I did an interview with someone from our institute who is basically in charge of sustainability and sustainable networking at our university, because UCL had done a lot. So I recommend you checking those things out in case you're interested. And yeah, it was basically lots of fun because I was able to network with lots of people who are also interested in sustainability and exchange. What are you doing? What do you think we can do? What are things that you're particularly struggling with in terms of sustainability? How can we make things better? And I think we generated a nice amount of resources that might be helpful to other people. Next slide, please. And yeah, basically a lot of these connections that I made through the eLife Ambassador program, I've been able to maintain. We sometimes still chat, being like, hi, how are you up to? Ewood, who's on the later call today, I believe, he actually was messaging me when he saw that I was on the panels. He was like, oh, we can catch up, but he's in the later panel, so we can't. So we'll have to do that via Twitter. And I was also invited to give a talk on sustainability for an early career researchers program, which was really exciting based on some of the articles that I had put out on sustainability through eLife. And I was invited as a website tester for new sustainability resources, which was also really cool. And my hope for the future is that some of you perhaps might want to continue the program that we'd set up and expand our initiatives, particularly the one on sustainability. I'm hoping that will increase awareness of waste generation in science, and of course that we will be able to make science accessible for a broader audience. And yeah, in case you'd like to connect and reach out, those are my details, and I'd like to thank you very much for your attention on this.
Thank you, Melanie. Our next speaker will be Malgorzata Gasta. Malgorzata is a researcher at the Institut Pasteur in France, and also have been taking part of the eLife Community Ambassador Program during the last cohort. So welcome, Malgorzata.
Hi, next slide, please. So when I started the eLife Ambassadors program in 2019-2020, I was at the time finishing my PhD in Portugal at CBO and University of Porto. And then, well, I progressed a lot of during the program, and I was also able to a little bit slow down with my participation when I was writing my thesis and preparing for the defense. So this accommodation, I think it's very important. And now I'm a postdoc at Institut Pasteur, as it was mentioned. And if you want to connect with me, please feel free to reach me out on Twitter. I'm happy to, advise you anything or take any questions. Next slide, please. So the question you might be asking, why you think or why you wanna become an eLife ambassador. And for me, I really wanted to do something new apart from doing like classical research. And as it was already mentioned, I really wanted to meet new people from across the world, not necessarily from my specific discipline. And then we always see many things that are not really working very well in academia, but then maybe not that much is done after all those discussions. So I really wanted to catalyze the positive change in academia. And then finally, I wanted to learn, explore, contribute, and get outside of my comfort zone. Next, please. Next slide, please. So the initiatives I was involved in, well, two of them were already mentioned. So it was meta research, environmental sustainability, and anti-bullying. And now I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the meta research. So in the beginning, like we connected with a lot of people who were also interested in meta research. So learning about well, the science of science, so learning about science in the scientific way. And then there was the project that has been developed at the previous edition of eLife Ambassadors that was looking at the quality of the images in the scientific publications. So we covered different fields. And then the screening protocol was already developed. So we validated the protocol, learned like everyone from the team learned how to execute it, and then we screened like thousands of papers for our paper. Then we found out that there were some common problems with the paper, that they were missing scale bars, they were not colorblind friendly, and the species wasn't mentioned, and so on. So this is all that we discuss in this paper, but we don't only show the problems, but we also try to suggest the solutions. So if you are interested in making your figures maybe better for the future paper, please check this out. Next slide, please. And then all those work helped me to connect with people. And then, well, with people that I was working in the team, we really connected. We never met in person, but we became really good friends over the course of the program and afterwards. So we still keep in touch. We also keep working on some projects. So I was invited to participate in brainstorming a session about the empowering early career researchers to improve science. So that was really fun experience. And all those was like, the doors were opened up by this program that I met a lot of people who helped me to connect with other people and open the possibilities for talks and other communities and so on. Next slide, please. I think that's it. So I would like to thank you and welcome another panelist. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have afterwards.
Thank you very much, Malgorzata. Our next and final panelist will be Tai Chi Li. Tai Chi is a researcher at the University of Oxford in the United Kingdom and also a former part of the ambassador program. So welcome, Tai Chi.
Thank you. Next, please. So, hi everyone. So my name is Tai Ying, and I'm from Taiwan, and I joined the eLife Ambassador Program in their first cohort, so in 2018. So that was in my first year of PhD, and currently I'm in my final year. And so I'm happy to be reached out through either Twitter or LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with me if you have any questions, etc. Next, please. So why did I become an ambassador? Pretty much similar as like all the other panelists have mentioned. So I'd like to promote and contribute to the best practices in academia and sciences, and especially empowering those with less resources. And I'd also like to meet and learn from all the likely-minded people from around the world. Next, please. So the initiatives I was involved in, the main initiative I was involved in is, at that time we call it fair funding. So the idea behind this is that the funding landscape is very competitive, and early career researchers are often in a less advantaged position because they have less resources and experiences and publications to compete with the very established labs in the field. And so what we did is we researched into like what are the best practices that already exist in the field, and then also like brainstorm about what could be done better. So things like, for example, taking into account of the career breaks, or like consider other scholarly output apart from publications, such as like software development or like code that the researchers generate and release. And the result is that we published this as a white paper in the Journal of Science Policy and Governance. So if you're interested, you can go have a look and let me know what you think. Next, please. So the impact of the program on my community, it actually really is mainly how I continue to build collaborations between eLife and other initiatives that are focusing on similar causes. So, for example, the top right is the conference that I organized called the European Neuroscience Conference by doctoral students, and I was really lucky that I got to invite Cora to give a workshop in that conference, and also like promote some of the best practices in the field to early career researchers from around the world. And the bottom is initiative called the Embezzle, which is a computational and neuroscience machine learning school focusing on strengthening the African community. And I helped to build the collaborations between them and the eLife, and to get some ongoing continual support. So on the right is a Wikipedia editathon that I organized for International Women's Day. So the aim was to increase the representation of women and other gender minorities, to by creating Wikipedia pages for them to create role models for others, and to help to combat systemic biases. And for this, I also get to build the collaborations with eLife, and also help building the collaboration between eLife and the pods in Argentina and California. So yeah, so the lasting impact of the program is really to continuously build collaborations between eLife and other likely-minded initiatives. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining this panel and for your attention. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tai-Ching, and thank you all to our speakers today. We will now proceed to the question and answers section of the webinars. Thanks everyone that made a question. There is still time to type a new question in the chat box in Zoom, or also in Twitter using the ECR Wednesday hashtag. So I will first start with more like a comment. Something that I really like about the Ambassador program is that for applying, you don't need a recommendation letter. So I think it's a very common thing that is sometimes create a bias in who can apply to certain things in academia, and some toxic relationship with your supervisors. And so I think in that sense, eLife is also a step ahead of thinking on how to create evaluation differently in academia. Yeah, I don't know if Cora, you want to give any detail about what do you need for applying to the program?
Okay, yes. In terms of my suggestions, I think it's more about thinking from your perspective. What, as an ambassador, I think on one hand, we're really keen to understand what is it that you want to learn, but also how you're going to use the learning from the program. Are there concerns in your community that you're aware of that you'd like to address? Or are there maybe concepts or things that you feel that you would be able to bring into your community from the program, or connect with your colleagues on a specific cause? So, for example, if you learn more about open science, would you be keen to talk to people in your lab? Would you be keen to, I don't know, would you feel comfortable to give a little talk in a journal club, for example? Would you even be interested in organizing maybe a preprint journal club, or something that allows you to use the things that you learn or hear about in the program and connect your community with those ideas? Or the other way around, you are aware of some specific concerns within your community that we might not be aware, and you can bring them to us and just say, you know what, I've actually had so many conversations, or we have recently had a panel discussion, or we had something in my institute, or at the conference that I was a participant, and I think we should really do something about this, or this really has a great consequences for what you're trying to achieve here. So I think it's about telling us how you feel, this role of you as an ambassador will kind of help connect us with connect the rest of the ambassadors and the agenda of pursuing greater openness, integrity, and inclusion in science with the community that you're embedded in. So that's I think that's an important element of your application. But in fairness, ambassadors are so diverse. They're we're basically looking for diversity of voices. So whatever rings true to you, don't feel afraid of putting that on the application, because that's what we're asking for. It's authenticity of what you're hoping to achieve by being an ambassador, or what you're looking forward to learn as being an ambassador. So there aren't really any magic bullets, or we don't have it's not a standard job description where there are specific skills and requirements that you need to meet. It's more about the fact that you're open to learning about different perspectives and different approaches in science, and that you are ready to find ways to use them and kind of make them known to people around you.
Thank you, Cora. I would like to make a question for all our panelists, and feel free, anyone, to answer it. And I would like to know, it's one of the question from the audience, how has the ambassador program affected your research and mindset during the process?
I think for me, it's kind of, so things I was interested in anyways, it's kind of encouraged me to pursue them further, because you meet other people who that matters to as well. And then you kind of have more of a community of people you can exchange thoughts with, which is really nice, and to get different perspectives on. That's really the main thing, because when you're in your bubble at your institute, perhaps you're the one person who cares about, intersectionality in science, but then you meet 20 other people who are also into intersectionality in science. And then you kind of see like, oh, this is really relevant. And we can see that we are able to create and produce something that might help other people, which is then very encouraging to pursue what you've been doing.
Great. Just for a matter of time, we'll go to the next question. It was from Ruchika Bahak. If Cora, you can give a deeper overview about what are the topics for the training sessions?
Yes, sure. And thank you, Ruchika, for asking that question. We are still developing the program, so any suggestions are welcome. But we certainly will have sessions around, as I said, reproducibility is a must, and an introduction to, a thorough introduction to open science. And some of those will be kind of self-taught, and some of those will be training sessions. So not for everything you will need to connect with a call or something like that. And then we're also hoping to give you a training into how to run a preprint journal club, and how to review papers in a just and fair and inclusive manner, and then how to get your reviews out there and post it so that they make a lasting contribution to the community. We will look at points related to advocacy and community building, and within that there will be a level of kind of leadership skills training as well, and things related to building your confidence within the for advocacy, to build your confidence to kind of go out there and speak up about different causes. So there will be quite a few different training sessions, and opportunities. As I said, we'll space them out so that they're not all coming in one go, and we're hoping to have probably around one training session per month to ensure that it is manageable for everybody. And they will be provided. If something will require being a part of the call, there will be several time slots for it and things like that. So we will make sure that everybody has the opportunity to participate, and we provide recordings, and some recordings of prior sessions that we did, especially in terms of science writing or building your profile online, for example, and things like that. All those sessions will be available as well for you to learn from the same things that the ambassadors in the past have learned already. I'm not sure if that has answered the question entirely, but as I said, we are still developing the exact schedule, and the skill sets that I have presented will definitely be covered.
And just to keep answering the question for Ruchika, she or he, is asking about which skill do you have to mention. I think I can answer that. You can mention all the skills that being a scientist is also a skill that are related to the purpose of the program in terms of doing science a more inclusive environment, fair and healthy is the objective of eLife. And of course, this is not joining the program does not mean to leave science at all. This is something that you can do during your free time. So in order to finish it, given that we are already at 8, and if someone want to give an advice for future ambassadors.
So I feel like the ambassadors program will have a lot of initiatives. There's going to be, I'm guaranteeing you, even if we select just 120 people now, we're going to be overwhelmed. There's going to be a lot of possible interesting initiatives. And I think the hardest thing is to try and find what you want to work on. And so just take the time to do that, pick one or two things so that you don't get personally overwhelmed and feel like you can't do anything or you're not achieving anything. But I think that that would be my major advice, because all initiatives are kind of great or, end up producing good outputs. And as you see, all of these people who are really enthusiastic come forward and do good work. But what you need to do is pick something among them and just take it forward in your own way. And that's the hardest challenge, I think, as an ambassador. And I would advise future ambassadors to also find what they really want to get out of the program.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. I totally agree. And I think so people join this program, they usually have like similar values. When people share similar values, might want to use different approaches to achieve slightly different specific outcomes. And I think having a clear goal and timeline before starting working together will be very important, especially we do this as a side, like we still have our whether it's PhD or PI, like our research careers going on. And so I think having a clear deliverables and timeline would be very important. And otherwise, if you don't have that, you might easily get overwhelmed, basically.
So thank you very much.
I would like to welcome our 4 panelists now. Our first panelist is Aparna Shah. Aparna is an assistant professor at the School of Neuroscience, Virginia Tech, USA. and an ambassador alumni from both the 2018 and 2018 program. Welcome, Aparna.
Thanks, Carolina. Hi, everyone. Want to make sure you can hear me okay? So I'm Aparna, currently a collegiate assistant professor at the School of Neuroscience at Virginia Tech in the US. I joined the school as a faculty member this fall, and this position is primarily teaching focused, but it also allows me to engage in neuroscience and education research. And I'm only mentioning this because it's somewhat unique, and I'd be happy to discuss it further outside of this webinar if anyone's interested. Before taking up the position, I was a postdoctoral research fellow at Johns Hopkins University. Actually, if you don't mind going to the next slide, please. I received my PhD, thank you, from UT Health San Antonio and moved to the US for graduate school after completing my bachelor's and master's degrees in Mumbai in India. So feel free to connect with me over Twitter. My handle was on the previous slide. And as Carolina mentioned, I was an eLife ambassador in 2018 as well as 2019, which overlapped with my postdoctoral years. Next slide, please. So why did I become an eLife ambassador? It was mainly to connect and work with early career researchers across the globe on identifying and addressing common issues in academia. Or in other words, why cry alone when you can vent together with other people across the globe? But on a more serious note, why not take some action instead of simply complaining? So in other words, as the Scouts motto here in the US goes, leave it better than you found it. So it being academic culture. And that's the underlying philosophy that really motivated me to become an ambassador. Next slide, please. So the initiatives that I was engaged in, which, Cora, if you could go to the next slide. Thank you. So I was engaged with several initiatives, perhaps at a more superficial level, but the two that I was actively involved in are the Reproducibility for Everyone initiative. And so that initiative involves several ambassadors, but there are other members of the scientific community outside of the ambassador program who are part of it as well. And the goal of this initiative was to come up with resources for reproducible research or to support reproducible research. And the underlying philosophy here is really very optimistic, or approaching the issues of reproducibility in science with an optimistic perspective, and actually doing something to enhance reproducibility instead of simply complaining about it and criticizing the reproducibility crisis. The other initiative that I was involved in was the Mentoring and Leadership Initiative. And as the name suggests, it was to come up with resources to enhance mentoring and leadership in academia. And so on the next slide, it mentions, thank you, the impact that the program and these two initiatives specifically had on me. So the program itself really provided a sense of community with some extraordinary people from different parts of the world. And it essentially is a platform to interact with genuinely good people who also happen to care about issues that I cared about. It provided amazing opportunities to lead workshops and network with people within science. And in a way, this was really empowering. And I'm quite certain that it helped me get to where I am currently. And in terms of the impact that it had on my research, I adopted several reproducible research strategies that I learned through the initiative. Not only that, as Cora mentioned, it is also a great way to learn enough material and then be able to advocate for it. So I did pass along those resources to others within the scientific community at Johns Hopkins, and of course within our lab as well. The program also gave me a global perspective on research culture and practices, such as publishing and mentoring strategies, etc., which impacted my research philosophy in a more intangible way. And in terms of the impact that I think that we had on the community, so along with other ambassadors and the R4E, the Reproducibly for Everyone team, I organized and conducted several workshops. And so I had the opportunity to conduct 2 workshops for the Society for Neuroscience, one of which was in person. And so we had about 250 people attend. And this included people at various career stages in science, right from undergraduate students all the way to directors of programs. And so hopefully we did have a good impact through those workshops. And I also participated or conducted one workshop for the Society of Study of Evolution. So the next slide mentions the papers, publications that we managed to put. One of these was recently published in March, I believe, and the other 2 were written during the pandemic. So for those who are asking about the kinds of outputs that we've had, hopefully these publications will influence academic culture and have some impact on the scientific community in upcoming years. And so that's all from me, and I'm happy to answer any questions during the webinar or outside of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aparna. Up next on our Ambassador Alumni panel is Emma Doris. Emma was a biomedical researcher at University College Dublin, Ireland, and is now the program manager for the National Public and Patient Involvement Network PPI Ignite at UCD. Welcome, Emma.
Thank you so much. Great. So I'll get you to switch on to the next slide, Cora. Great. So hi, everybody. So I'm Emma. I was a postdoc when I joined the first round of the eLife Ambassador Programme, and I have been an ambassador for the first 2 years that it ran. I was a postdoc at the time, and I also had 3 children under the age of 5 when I joined it as well. So if there's any parents out there, that's the reason I mention it. You know, it is possible. So the 2 pictures that I have up here represent really 2 of kind of the proudest things of my career, one expected and one not. So the cake represents when my research led to the naming of a human gene, basically. So, you know, lots of great, obviously very proud, you know, unsurprising that would be something we'd be proud of. The other is a still from a YouTube animation that I did. I was working on the biology of a rare disease and chatting with somebody who lived with that condition. They mentioned to me how difficult it was to explain to their friends and family about what that condition was. So Rare Disease Day was coming up. So I put together an animation explaining what the disease was and what the research we were doing about it was. And honestly, didn't think much else about it, pretty much forgot about it until I got a phone call from the clinicians at the National Centre here. They'd had somebody in, and the aunt of the child who had recently been diagnosed asked the clinician if she knew who had done the video. They wanted to thank me because that video was the reason that they went to this particular centre after months and months and months of not getting a diagnosis. So this small video that I really didn't put much consideration into or didn't think too much about it had a real and tangible impact on somebody's life. Which was kind of a feeling I'd never really experienced before. My motivation was always science and the curiosity about it. And the only reason I did that video was because I was talking to somebody who had lived experience of the disease I was working on. I was working in the lab with cells. And the only reason I was speaking to the person was because of a movement called public involvement in research. And I'll come back to that because that's the part of the initiative that I set up with the eLife ambassadors. Do you want to pop to the next slide? Right, so the reason that motivated me to become an ambassador, I'm sure many of you find the academic system is pretty crazy and broken in many ways, and navigating it can be quite difficult. So I had seen this. I'm a solution-orientated kind of person, and I was looking for what could I do rather than just complain about it, to actually do something about it to improve the system. So I'd been kind of engaging and looking around things around open science when I came across the Ambassador Programme. Do you want to next slide, please? So the initiative that I set up was the Public Involvement in Research Initiative. This initiative was small. There was a core group of about 4 or 5 of us, really. There'd be other people that would kind of pop in and out of the initiative. But kind of the main group was about 4 or 5 of us. And public involvement is focused on engaging with the people who your research impacts downstream, to make your kind of research more relevant, better, and a better use of funds. This opened the door to be able to write blogs, both through the ECR, through the Ambassador blog, but also through the likes of the NCCP in the UK. We published a paper out of it as well. And most importantly, I worked with some really fantastic people through it. Do you want to next slide, please? So this had a huge impact on me personally. So the biggest impact, I think, was probably around the confidence that it gave you that there were other people out there, even if they're not necessarily local to you. There are other people out there who are noticing the same things, coming across the same problems, and there's a community there that can support you. And that allowed me to kind of start making more local changes. So things like joining committees within my local university. By joining one of the communications committees, it meant that I was then able to, 1 year at our annual festival for the institution, have a session on public involvement in research. The next year, I had a session on open science practices. Cora was our keynote speaker at that event. I was able to go to present the research we'd done through the initiative at the Open Science Fair. That was fantastic, and I really picked up some excellent networking opportunities there, and there's people I work with now from that. One of the greatest things was that I was actually awarded the university's Values in Action Award in 2019 for the work I'd done around promoting public involvement in research. So these are real and kind of tangible effects. And of course, the biggest thing to me is that I actually ended up changing my career, and I now work full time on public involvement in research, in actually implementing that on a national level in Ireland. Do you want to pop to the last slide, I think? Yeah, so that's it in a nutshell. So just a couple of things to note. When I first started in the Ambassador Programme, and at that time we were all new, we weren't quite sure what we were doing. I wasn't quite sure what it was about. So it took a little while to find our feet in it. Now, that's part of the reason they've changed the next one, but I wouldn't be too discouraged about that. And especially if you don't know anybody else at the time. I think I was the only Irish ambassador in the first year of the programme. But I mean, I come from a biomedical background, and I ended up working with people in marine biology and in forestry and in data science. And it was just such a fantastic experience to get to work with people from such diverse fields that have different views on things and really kind of get your mind thinking in a different way. So I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you very much, Emma, for sharing your experience. Next, we have Eva Cooper. Eva is a researcher at the University of Oxford, UK, an ambassador alumni from 2018, and an editor at ECR Live. Welcome, Eva.
Hey, thank you, Carolina. Yeah, so just a quick wrap up from me. So I'm Ewald Compeer, or Ewood Compeer, if they call him here in the UK. So I'm originally from the Netherlands. I did my bachelor and master's in the University of Utrecht. During an internship at Harvard Medical School, met my PhD supervisor, who coincidentally moved back to Utrecht. So I ended up doing all three in the Netherlands, in Utrecht, where I am studying immunology, and more importantly, using state-of-the-art microscopy techniques, that we can see here. I got a bit frustrated that I couldn't technically see everything, what's going on at interfaces where cells were communicating in high definition. Which pushed me to go to Sydney which was the only place where they actually had these kind of techniques to do this. So moved down there to look at a nanoscale what was going on, and now took that experience technically as well with me to the University of Oxford to now do it also in 3D. So that's kind of the science, but of course what I was doing in my extra spare time, so to say, is the most important part for this kind of presentation. So in my master's, I already started as representing the masters in the educational committees, discussing what we can do, what kind of content we would like, and how could we get prepared as a master's student the best to start our PhD training. That experience I took with me and became the PhD council representative in the Graduate School of Life Sciences in Utrecht, where again we were working, how can we prepare the PhD candidate for the real job market, not only to become a postdoc, but also maybe other things. And I took that experience with me on the European Union level, where I then represented the Dutch PhD candidates with an institution called Orpheus, where we're kind of trying to standardize the quality of DPhil or PhD education in Europe. And that really showed me the power of representation, that we could really initiate some changes in the end locally, and that really affected me also personally. So yeah, when I heard about the eLife Ambassador program, I really straight went into it and was like, this is something that I would like to do. And what eLife showed me is also the power of community. So taking those two things together, the power of representation, the power of community, actually when Brexit happens here in the UK, and followed of course also with the COVID and the lockdown, I looked around and I noticed that there was no representation of Dutch academics in the UK. So then I founded a non-for-profit organization, the Dutch Academic Network in the UK. I'm now working together with the Dutch embassy in London, working and contacting editors, journals, and that sort of stuff, to try and change also the science and the science communication bilateral between different countries and with different nationalities. So that's what I'm doing now. You can go to the next slide, Cora. So in the next slide, so that's why I became an ambassador. So I already kind of mentioned the motivation personally, but also just the observation that I had in my personal life and my personal experiences from people around me. Like, this is not a sustainable environment that we are doing our research in. I saw good friends that I really appreciated leaving science. I was like, we can't do this way. So I really want to try and change the research environment. And by that, I meant the research culture that we work in, but also the tools that we're having or the sharing of these tools, so we can actually further our careers quite quickly. And on top of that, I really enjoy working in this kind of international collaborative projects, because realize the eLife program is a global program. And of course, it was a good way to kind of meet new like-minded early career researchers. And on top of that, you also learn something for yourself on the way. So the next slide, please. So the initiative that I kind of landed on in the end was the peer review initiative, because it was both important for career advancement. If we can't get rewarded for our peer review, how can we further our careers? But on top of that, how do you get rewarded? How do you get recognized? Because often that didn't happen. And that's something that I actually learned by talking in those first months with the community. So that's how I got involved with the peer review. If we go to the next slide. So the direct output actually of that initiative, so together with the next panelist, actually, we published a wonderful paper on how to guide almost on how to get involved in the peer review as an early career researcher. And it has proven to be quite well, actually. Of course, we also made a kind of awareness blog post or manuscript that we put together with eLife. And I'm now also very proud to actually working as an editor at eLife and trying to help raise your voice to be heard now in this platform and give you the platform that I had myself as well. And with these ideas and with this whole peer review initiative, when the COVID broke out here, we had the Oxford team working on the vaccine. They had no time to catch up with the ongoing latest developments in science, all the preprints that we're pushing out globally by everyone. So what we came up with, I saw the opportunity, we sat down with our team here, and we came up with the Ox Immuno COVID-19 Literature Initiative. It's a long word, but what we did is we looked at the COVID-19 preprints, based on immunology, of course, because it was our experience at the time. That's our team here. And we made kind of peer review short reports that they then could use to kind of quickly learn what's going on. Then we figured out quite quickly we need more experience, more people, so become interdepartmental. Then we got another university involved. And actually, we started working together with Nature Reviews Immunology to highlight some of these preprints in their preprint watch. And spin-off that we now have of this is actually our a parallel initiative by Mount Sinai in New York University that does the same thing. So we're now working with them, and we have a shared or joint preprint journal club that we have once a week. And again, the best preprint of the month we will be highlighting in Nature Reviews Immunology. On top of that, other outputs that we had is like I got interviewed for a podcast to talk about this kind of topics, and I'm chairing with 5 others the Dutch Society of Young Immunologists. Again, creating a community and using that power to change our research culture. You can go to the next slide. So I wanted to end with kind of the hope that I had for the future. So of course, from the peer review perspective, the inclusion of early career researchers in peer review. We know from eLife that they've got this early career researcher review pool. We've got other community platforms that are built, such as Society, helping getting early career researchers recognition. And personally, in the end, I just want to create a sustainable and collaborative culture that we can have that can optimally benefit society in the end by kind of shifting away from only focusing on publications, your individual triumphs, and start rewarding more of a collaborative culture and not only focusing on publication, which is important, but also on perhaps rewarding other talents that people have, such as teaching or team management. So I hope that that's where we will be heading and that you guys will contribute to this in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Evo. We're very lucky to have you in the eLife team, actually. Our final panelist is Patricia Reza Infante. Patricia is a researcher at the Caixa, Barcelona, Spain, and is an eLife Community Ambassador Program alumni. Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you, Carolina. So thank you all for being here. I'm really happy to explain my experience as eLife ambassador. It really changed, made a click in my way of seeing science. So about me, just to explain you a little bit my life in a summary. So I was an undergraduate student in Barcelona. I'm from Barcelona. So I studied here and I started to work in the lab. I'm a molecular virologist. And already, maybe you can, Cora, can you click to the next animations here in these slides? It might be faster and easier. Yeah, a bit more. So during that time, I was already moving to Germany, doing a short stay in Saarland in Germany. Later, I did my PhD in Madrid, and then I was doing also a short stay in the States. Then I did a first postdoc in Germany, and during that time, I was doing 2 short stays. So and later on, after some time there in Germany, I was at EMBL in Grenoble in France, doing another postdoctoral stay. And during that time, I was doing another stay. And finally, I moved back to Barcelona, which was my aim, so to speak. And I'm working here at Caixa as a molecular biologist. I have a position of research associate. So I'm not, I don't have a group, but I do a lot of research. And during that time, so along my career, I've been moving around. I've met a lot of people. I like traveling a lot, although I wanted to come back home. But there was a time that I was feeling that I wanted something else than doing this research. I was lacking something else. I did some initiatives like starting a journal club in the campus, or an alumni association with one of the institutions and so on. But I wanted something more. And then this eLife Ambassador program came across, and I thought that sounds good. I'm not really sure what's going to be this, but sounds appealing. And then that's why I moved. So that's what it was attracted to me. I wanted to make a step forward in contribute to opening the science and advocate for positive change and encourage crosstalk among scientist disciplines to promote collaborative science. Because I was realizing that in every place, most of the research I was doing was always talking to people doing things similar to what I was doing. So it's interesting to learn from others with completely different perspectives. And that's what pushed me to do something else, like besides the research and investigation itself, something else. So something in the science field, but parallel to what I normally did. So if we go to the next slide, the initiatives I was involved was these two, the peer review initiative together with Ebut and some colleagues. And it was a real pleasure, this. And another one was I was contributing, but with a bit less, was mentoring and leadership. And here I would like to share the experience, and that I guess I was not the only one that make shape also this new program. In the beginning, when we started this group, the ambassador in 2019, there are so many interesting things, everything you want to contribute. This is interesting, that is interesting. I want to help here. I want to do that. You want to do everything, and then you feel overwhelmed with everything. So then you learn that it's better to put effort on one initiative or two, maybe 2 or 3, no more, and then make a change. And then you hear that your colleagues in the other initiatives are contributing to that. You would like to also help there, but there is not enough time. And to put, when I really put the focus on contributing to these two initiatives and put my effort and time, I was amazing. And then you learn how people that work in different fields, different parts of the world, connecting and then making an effort to connect at the same time. Now we are more used to that because of the pandemics and everything changed. But by then I never experienced that, or how to make we prepare. So if in the output, can you go to the next one, please? For instance, we published these two piece of works that are here on the right together with Ebot. I was amazed how we were building these documents together, like writing at the same time, and maybe I contribute here. And that was totally new to me. And I learned so much from everybody in that team. It's amazing. What I learned is amazing. And also trying to make a change, something that goes beyond the research that I was doing, publishing these papers and learning how this virus does that, because I'm a biologist. It was going somewhere else, and it fulfilled me. It was really nice. So what the impact that the program had in me and the research and the community, because everything is interconnected, was to bring the collaborative work to the next level. It's something I didn't know, I didn't experience in this way, because I've worked with many colleagues and make collaborations before. I mean, I've been moving around, and then you make papers with this and that. But this is another thing. This is something else, and you put your opinion, and everything is welcome. Maybe you are changing completely the idea of somebody else, but that's fine. That's okay if you do it respectfully. And then I met wonderful people that I keep in touch, and that's great, actually, especially during the pandemics, that you felt so lost and everything. There was a community there supporting each other. It gives me new perspective to what research means. It's not only in getting to know how this molecule does that. Research goes beyond that. And also I enjoy a lot the belongingness in a community driven by common interest and discovering which are these common interests. And of course my network grew, and this also, it was internationally with everybody within the ambassador, but gave me perspective to grow my network beyond that. I have been a different attitude since then, and then my network has grown within the campus I'm working, and even attending other courses or conferences. Then you learn, and then that's great, because it drives everything. Not only research, is everything, and I enjoy a lot. I strongly recommend you to try to be part of it. It was great. And I think I think that's it. So I'm happy to answer any question now during the Q&A time that we have left, but afterwards as well. You can reach me anytime.
Thank you very much, Patricia. I'm looking forward to seeing how the upcoming ambassadors drive forward these initiatives and more. And thank you to all the speakers. It was wonderful. We will now proceed to the Q&A section of the webinar. Thanks for all the questions we've received so far. The chat is still open, so feel free to type a question in the chat box or tweet us questions on Twitter at eLife Community using the hashtag ECR Wednesday. So we have several questions so far. So well, at the beginning, some people were questioning if they are transitioning from PhD to postdoc. That's perfectly fine. You can be an ambassador as long as you're an early career stage researcher. So if you're a postdoc, that's okay. What have been the outputs of the previous ambassador programs? I think we've heard some very, very interesting ones. I can share with you actually a link. I will do it in the chat. There are some of the, it's like a review of the second cohort of ambassadors, and you can see some of the initiatives and the accomplishments there. What else? Okay. So it says, is there a list somewhere of ongoing initiatives to use as illustrations? That's why I share the link. And Juliet says, hello, some of the challenges I faced during my PhD in Colombia involved fair funding and harassment for one of my supervisors. I truly believe that what it was done was partially due to a culture that approves such behavior. It's true. I'm sure that my supervisor did that because of the pressure she also faces all the time. This is like an unending loop. In what way the eLife Ambassadors community will support my activism in my community besides my training? Does any of you want to say something about that? Of the panelists, or what do you think?
Sure. Yeah, I can mention something on that. So in terms of how they'll support you, it's more in terms of finding people who are passionate about making the same changes as you are, so that you can kind of learn peer-to-peer from each other. So even if it's not locally, people within Colombia, that there are issues around bullying, harassment, overwork. These are common things across. So it's by working through the ambassadors, you kind of meet other people who might have ideas or things that you can test or that have been tested in other places that you could then, try to implement in your own space. So it's about really making those connections, I think, most of all, and it kind of gives you that platform to make those connections and kind of build those relationships with people that you probably wouldn't have encountered otherwise.
Very well said.
If I may add, sorry, Carolina, it's just so that is actually something where I think we've learned from previous programs, and we certainly in this edition are looking to help groups of ambassadors who are interested in working on a new initiative to connect with experts who are already active in those areas, to make sure that any of the initiatives that are kind of newly establishing themselves are both aware of current efforts to improve whichever aspect of research culture they're addressing, and that they are adding value to some solutions that are being proposed, and that they're at the forefront of those initiatives.
Thank you, Cora. Thomas was saying, I'm a little bit unclear on the focus of the program with regards to global versus local issues. For example, I see improving peer review as a global issue in the sense that it involves all ECR and researchers everywhere similarly. On the other hand, inclusiveness is more of a set of local issues. In Eastern Europe, making the academia more inclusive may mean something else than in North America. Do you have any comments on on that?
I can take it first if that's okay. And if other panelists would like to chip in, I would very much like to hear from you. So the program, so the confusion is probably the result of the fact that we don't have a focus. So some of those issues are kind of all encompassing for all of science, and some might be more granular. And it's very much the ambassador's choice what they would like to, on individual level, not for the entire cohort, of what type of initiative you would like to kind of be involved in yourself. The one stress or emphasis that we have is that whatever kind of initiative you're working in is something that you can translate into your own community. So in that sense, if we're working on, say, improving the peer review, you will be provided with training, for example, around how to provide constructive and fair peer review. You might want to extend some of that learning to your community by either becoming a trainer and providing training to your community, or at least setting up a poster on a kind of local festival of the scientific achievement of your institute, to just talk to other people and raise awareness of some of the things that they may not have thought about, or maybe things that are easy to maybe slip off their minds when they are doing the reviews themselves. So this is about the fact that, yes, this is meant to connect with different communities, and some issues might be more localized. Like, for example, you were talking about inclusivity in Eastern Europe. That might be something different to maybe other parts of the world. And it is all about sometimes, localizing the general concern about inclusivity for your community. And sometimes maybe just your involvement in an initiative can enable other ambassadors to see it from your perspective, and then potentially, localize solutions to a slightly different flavor of a bigger issue or concern that people have in general. So that's my 5 cents. And if anybody wants to chip in, then go in.
Yeah, does anyone else have something to add to what Cora was saying? Okay, so Juan is asking, how much time commitment did you have in the program? Is it a huge commitment on time, or how was your experience to combine the program with your positions at the time?
I can go. I think it really depends. So we're trying to give you the handle of those 3 hours. But in reality, sometimes it takes a little bit longer, and then suddenly you're busy in one moment and not. So it really depends on what you do. I think, as Pat already indicated, it's usually better to focus than to spread yourself a little bit too thin. And don't forget, you're working in a team. So even if you can't contribute that one particular week, somebody else will step up and will do it for you. It's a team effort. And I think that was really clear in our initiative with Pat as well. So sometimes we couldn't, and somebody else helped you out or stepped in to do it. And then the opposite happens and a week or a month later. So I wouldn't worry too much there. I don't think there is any bet of you're not doing enough. But there will be a carrot, hopefully, at the end, that there will be some lovely research outputs, as we have shown you now, amongst others, now in our panelists.
Thank you, Val. Yes, so I'll read the next question. Shraddha is saying, I'm wondering what leeway or access eLife ambassadors have to truly affect broader cultural change in academic institutions. What metrics are used to track changes? By cultural change, I refer to equitable practices that will build more accountability in the system to protect young trainees from abuse and exploitation, disability awareness, etc. Any thoughts?
So again, I just wanted to draw back as to the fact that so eLife will provide training in a sense of, some of the skills, some of the communication skills and advocacy, leadership skills, those kind of equipping ambassadors to try and make the change in the situation where they can. We will support you if you are running events or running discussions. Sometimes we might be able to help with offering speakers from within the community for different things where you might want to organize something. It really, the initiatives we had so far were so varied that it really differs from one initiative to another. And it also will differ from one institution to another about how how they go about change. And actually, sometimes there will be something on your shoulders in terms of investigating what are pathways to suggesting or goading a change in policy in your institution. But as I said, at the very least, we'll give you a starting point of thinking about some effective strategies that have worked or tend to work in different circumstances.
Thank you very much, Cora. Maria Sol,
if I may add something about
course.
How to quantify and everything, actually some of the initiatives was to evaluate the situation in some concerns. For instance, if there are differences or if there is bullying or if there, so to raise awareness. So some of the initiatives, one of the actions were actually to measure that. So you may decide how to measure it as a one of the actions. So it really depends, as Cora was saying, depending on the initiatives and whatever, but measuring might be an action of some of the initiatives itself.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you for the input, Patricia. Maria Sol is saying the program sounds amazing. However, I'm worried by the lack of local institutional support for the initiatives. And I would say that that's kind of the things that we want, like try to open new ways to promote actually institutional support. So any ideas that we can have about how we can get those spaces, it's actually very, very welcome. And if it's something that is lacking in your local institution, maybe that's a possibility and we can help to do that. Someone else want to say something about that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time local institutions may be supportive. It may just be that you don't actually know the contact person or who that support is. So every institution is different, but you will need to make them aware that you are there and doing this. They won't naturally find you if you don't kind of bang some drums and let them know that you're there, you're interested, you have this community, and kind of come to them with ideas. So if you want kind of more support from your institution or more options with that, you actually need to, in my experience, go out to them and kind of you be the engager of that. A lot of the times it's purely that it's overlooked because there are so many other things going on. So if you're not the initiator of that, then you won't get anywhere. So you need to kind of do a little bit of homework on who are the important people within those, or not even the important people within them, but the people that can make your voice be heard, and do a little bit of homework on how you identify who they are, and then go to them with an idea or with a solution as opposed to with the problem, and you will tend to get listened to more often than not.
Thank you for that. Okay, so I think we've run out of time. And please be sure that we will respond all the questions anyway by email in a couple of days. And you're free to post all of the questions via Twitter with ECR Wednesday hashtag. And please contact us at events@elife.org if you would like to ask follow-up questions or provide us with feedback. We also encourage you to post about the event on social media platforms you may use, ensuring that you use the ECR Wednesday hashtag and the @eLife community tag. ECR Wednesday is a series of webinars that we host, and past editions on the series are available online. So please do check them out on the eLife website. We will announce the next edition of the ECR Wednesday webinar series soon, and we look forward to seeing you then. Until then, take care and stay safe. And thank you all. The panelists were great. The questions were great. So very happy to be here. And yes, I hope the new ambassadors are motivated enough for the next future.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Carolina.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much to everyone.
Thanks.